Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing Summerween series, celebrating hot weather and horror movies by bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of Haddonfield.
In this episode, we are talking about Halloween. That's right, the original 1978 Halloween, at long last. We're going to discuss this film sort of by centering around two main questions. Number one, why is this the best slasher? And number two, why does Michael Myers do what he does? After that, we have a little treat for you. We're going to share some clips from episodes from years past, because in the past we have talked about this movie, but not in its own discussion. We just kind of talked about it in passing in comparison to other things. So you're going to get to hear some stuff from the deep cuts way back in the archives. Strap in and enjoy.
All right, so strap in and enjoy kind of sounds like a threat, but
you better strap in and enjoy.
It's a little foreboding. But yeah, this is kind of a retrospective. So This is our penultimate episode of Summerween. We know it's not Halloween yet. That's next Friday, but it was close enough.
Close enough.
I realized we'd never actually done an episode on the original 1978 John Carpenter Halloween.
I know. I think for a while we were maybe a little afraid to tackle like the big favorites or the big classics, for reasons that we've discussed in the past. Like, it's intimidating. You don't know where to start. And we have talked about it in passing so often that I think we just never really sat down to do a dedicated episode. But I'm really glad we're doing it this year. We sat down and watched this last weekend at home. I think at this point we've probably watched Halloween every single year since the first time we saw it in like 2020. And I'm really excited to talk about it. It hits every time. It's just so good every time.
My perception of the show is totally weird because I had to do a lot of listening for this episode.
Yeah.
Of course, we both prepped our notes. We're going to talk about the movie, but that second part of the episode, that's going to be clips from episodes of yore, I had to go back and listen to the show, which is something I try my best never to do. And I was so worried that the early episodes would be total dog shit. And I did edit the clip from the early days.
Say, in some ways, our episodes are never shit. I'm proud of our episodes always. But
sure.
Some of them, we've grown a lot. We've grown a lot. That's what I'll say. We've grown a lot.
But we were covering some cool topics.
Yeah.
And we only have 3 clips that we're going to get to. But for reference, if you do want to continue this ball rolling, we talked about this movie in the context of about 1 million other episodes, be it the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the movie that we've done the most episodes on, Jaws, the first 4 Fellowship of the Ring chapter-by-chapter breakdowns, Mike Flanagan's Hush, James Wan's Malignant, Alien Romulus, the 3rd episode of the Patreon-exclusive Breakfast Buffet Roundup series in the context of Eli Roth's Thanksgiving.
Oh, cool.
Our discussion of the 1922 original Nosferatu, and the mailbag episode that we did about 5 years ago.
That's hilarious.
And that's the ones we didn't use. I had to spend like half a day listening to my own voice say things I don't remember saying.
From years ago.
It was unnerving.
Well, and I think that's the thing, is that I think that's telling, not only for us just as fans of this movie, but for the legacy of this movie. We don't talk about this in the context of all those other things because we like to. It's because it's relevant, because it sets the paradigm for the slasher and just for horror, like modern horror in general. I know it's not the first slasher. We talked about that, I think, on our Friday the 13th episode.
We did an episode on Black Christmas, which is the first slasher. One. Yeah.
But this really sets the bar and kind of sets the precedent. And so maybe that's where we should start, is why is this the best slasher of them all, even though it's one of the earliest? This was your question that you posed. Do you want to start with some of your thoughts?
Yeah, because I felt like that was a good place to start, because obviously it's one of the most iconic, spawning Michael Myers and The Mask and all the tropes and cliches that have become so, I don't know, I guess tired. They're still so effective that it's hard to call them tired.
But they can be. Like, we talked about this in our, not to keep plugging the Patreon, but we recently did a buffet, and in that breakfast buffet we talked about The Strangers Chapter 2, which is part of this reboot trilogy series of The Strangers.
It is. And
we talked a lot about how it is not doing anything new. Like, it's using some tropes that we're used to in slashers, but it's not doing anything interesting with it. It's just kind of I don't know, kind of laying it on the table in a very non-committal way, and we were really disappointed by that. So, but that might have felt a little different 40 years ago when this stuff wasn't old and tired.
Sure. I just think you can miss the forest for the trees in saying Halloween, well, that's one of the first slashers. That's one of the most influential slashers. And I think that misses the important point of, it is still the best slasher.
Yes.
So, I wanted to talk about that. Of why is this the best slasher? We can kind of popcorn this between us. Do you want to start with the first one?
Well, I think my instinctual answer to that question was just in its execution, and that it's doing everything really, really well. The script is tight. The characters are like very quickly easy to understand and connect with like right away. The atmosphere and setting in this movie is perfect and so visceral, and I so feel like I'm there, and I've been there, even though I've never been to Haddonfield, Illinois, and I didn't even grow up in like the Midwest or the Northeast. I grew up down here in Texas, but like I feel like I've been to that town and I know those people. And not to mention, the music is astonishing. It's fantastic. I listened to this score while prepping for this episode, and it was so much fun. And the villain is of course perfect. He is terrifying, he's memorable, he's simple, but he's incredibly effective, incredibly iconic. Just every single part of this movie is fantastic. It's all executed to like, I think, the highest degree, even when you take into account the pretty bad acting from some of the side characters, because
one
that's
in particular,
because that's a hallmark of the slasher, is that the acting is not usually very good, or at least the side characters are not very good. They're not very fleshed out. They're a little archetypical. Archetypical? Whatever. Who fucking cares? They're archetypes. You were right
the first time.
I'm just gonna keep on rolling. Like they're not really fleshed out people in the way that your main character usually is, but that doesn't matter, and that's fine. Like it's doing all of the slasher things really, really well.
Yeah, I really like that point about feeling like you've been to Haddonfield. Watching it this time, because you're right, we have watched it at least once a year for the past 5 years, so we know it pretty back to front now. But I did grow up with seasons. I did grow up with fall in New England.
Lucky you. I'm so mad.
But I think the strength of the film isn't just that you feel like you've been to Haddonfield. Even if you didn't grow up with beautiful seasons and leaves changing, it feels like you've lived there.
Yes. You're not just been there, lived there. Because it feels like how all of the other movies you grow up with feel. It just feels like that quintessential American suburban neighborhood. And it, like, I think that's one of the things I like about this movie is that it feels so American, because the slasher genre itself is very American. Like this, I mean, not that this can't be enjoyed by somebody in another country. I know it has been, but it feels so like connected to me personally as an American, even though I didn't grow up in the 70s and I didn't grow up in Illinois. Like I said, like it just feels so familiar and comforting, which then makes the horror of it feel so terrifying.
Over the top violence and serial killers and home invasions and all of them ending with a gun battle. All of these are distinctly American ideas.
Certainly.
Yeah, there is a weird sense of ownership you feel over it. To kind of piggyback what you said, we've watched it so many times. I think that in itself is an asset. The film is so fantastically rewatchable.
Yes.
It's so moody. The colors are so rich. The place is so interesting and comfortable, but always kind of on edge. Mm-hmm. It moves. It doesn't move terribly quickly.
No.
Like, I was kind of wrestling with this in the notes, because the movie is sort of slow, but it's always propulsive.
It's incredibly tense, because even in the moments that are slowed down, you're either watching Laurie being stalked, or you're watching something happen with Michael, or you're just sort of like getting a little dive into the characters, and you, of course, at the beginning of the movie, the movie opens with Michael at age 6 killing his sister. And then it cuts later to him coming out of prison. And so you know that he's coming. So you're aware of the threat like the whole time. And even though some of your characters aren't. So you're always thinking about that. And then also this tension is building as he's stalking Laurie, as he's stealing, a knife and rope from the hardware store. And so you are like constantly worried about what's going to happen. And so that sort of paranoia creeps in and makes the thing feel propulsive, even though at times it is very slow.
And I'm glad you complimented execution, because that is such a huge part of this, because each individual scene feels roomy, but the plot that's rumbling underneath is incredibly dense and efficient.
Yes.
There's like a brutal editing under the surface. So even though things can creep and crawl and get all moody and atmospheric, there's no wasted time.
Right. So it's like simultaneously a movie you can get lost in and like enjoy being in its world, yeah. Right? Where it's like, oh, you put it on in the background and you're immersed in the world. But at the same time, it's tense and propulsive and dense. And so you can't look away at the same time. It's like the perfect combination of things.
I was kind of marveling at it when I was watching it this time. I felt like I was just seeing the structure and the puppet strings. And feel free to disagree with this, but my take is that there are 0 purely expositional scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's even more than that. And I have a couple examples to kind of flesh this out. When Laurie, I'm going to use the names because I actually know the names for once instead of having to default to the actors.
Good for us, yeah.
When Laurie meets Tommy, Michael is following them.
Mm-hmm.
And he's behind the window in the house. And then he's following them after that. When the girls are walking home after school, Michael is following them. When we meet Loomis, Michael is escaping.
Mm.
All of these kind of necessary scenes for the plot are tinged with horror. And they're made essential to the chase of the movie, of Michael being this impossible force that is stalking all of these characters.
That's true, yeah.
It's not just that none of the scenes are purely expositional because they have always that horror element in the margins. It's that there's no scene in the movie that feels safe. And I think that's something that almost no other slasher can say. You feel almost the on-off toggle when you're watching a slasher movie of, okay, this is the boring exposition where I have to meet the characters and pretend to care about them before we can go to the fun scene of killing one of them off.
Or sometimes it's not even boring. It's more just like, oh, thank God I get to breathe for a minute because I know this is a safe scene. Like, oh, it's daylight again. Or, oh, I can like take a breath and I can like enjoy the happy moments for a little bit. Even though you know you're watching a horror movie and it's going to get bad again, you feel a sense of reprieve. Like I'm thinking about, this isn't a slasher, but like Sinister, for example. Every time like the worst night of Ethan Hawke's life ends and it's daylight again, you're like, oh, thank God, you know? And then the second starts to get dark, you're like, oh, fuck, you know? But in Halloween, you're nervous the whole time.
And even Midsommar, I remember when that came out, to kind of a normal pop culture audience, it seemed like an innovation of daytime horror. Yeah. Oh, that's unusual. I wonder if that's going to feel more eerie or stressful. And I didn't realize it the first couple times I saw this film, but Halloween kind of it leads that daytime horror revolution in the first 10 minutes of the film.
You know, that's true. Like the only scenes that take place at night are the very first opening scene and then like the finale climax at the end. But a lot of it takes place during the day. That's really true. And it's very scary.
The really memorable shots of fear and horror and stalking the prey in the first act of the film are all in daytime. It's all of those unbelievably effective over-the-shoulder shots. And those are all in daytime. That's him walking by a school.
Yeah, I
never Or him peeling out of the parking lot by Loomis.
Yeah, or just standing by that hedge. Like, yeah, that's so true. I hadn't really thought about, I mean, I think about those scenes, but I hadn't really thought about that as, yeah, that's in the middle of the day, and it's still so scary.
And I love the effect that has on an audience, having the daytime horror and having horror on the margins of every expositional scene. It means that the audience is always on high alert. We're always on guard because we set the template very quickly that there are no safe scenes. And I think what that means in a more active storytelling sense is that the audience is always watching. It sounds like almost counterintuitive, but we're always watching at our full attention because Michael could always be there, or we could learn something necessary, and the characters don't know he's only 5 feet behind them.
Right, because that's what's most of the time happening is they don't know he's there. It's not till like the very end that they become aware of his presence, and even though we've known it the whole time. So yeah, it increases this fear of paranoia. And I think
we're also just dialed in. We're just paying attention more. There's no scene where you can go to the bathroom.
Right, because you're going to miss a key moment where Michael's creeping out in the corner. Exactly. And when I said earlier that this feels really American, I think this sort of to kind of tie that with this paranoia you're talking about and this constant feeling of being watched or watching, and even in the middle of the day, in the most mundane, boring conversations, this looming threat is there. I think what I like about this movie is let me back up. So I think movies, but especially horror, often are reflecting societal fears and priorities of the time and place in which they were made. But I think what's happening here is a much more universal and timeless fear, which is evil has come to your town. I mean, Loomis says that. He says that to the sheriff. It's the corruption of innocence. It's the idea that the perfect, suburban American life can be disrupted by the ultimate nameless, faceless evil. Like, that's the scariest thing. And so the fact that Michael is always there, even during the middle of the day, around children. Like even when you think about the scene where the kids come out of the school and the little boy runs into him, he doesn't do anything. But the big musical cue and the sudden jump scare of him being there is so scary, and he could do something. Like that it's ever present and everywhere. Like that's what's so scary, and that feels very, I don't know, timeless and always
it's
relevant
evergreen
to me.
Yeah. I feel like the further the film goes, the more it leans into that, because at the beginning he's just walking around. He's a guy in a weird outfit and a mask, and why is he staring at a high schooler through a window?
Yep.
But by the end of the movie, he is that fear of, oh, my house isn't really safe.
Yes.
And he's breaking into homes. And then it's just a more elemental fear of the dark, because he's just, I don't know, emerging out of shadows in this completely ethereal way.
Right.
He's
he becomes
corrupting.
more and more ethereal.
Yes,
Corrupting
exactly.
everything. Yeah. And if you think about, I mean, one of the pinnacles of the slasher is your main characters are either teens or young adults. And I think one of the reasons for that is partly is because maybe these movies are made for teens and young adults, so you need them to latch on to their protagonists. But I think it's also that this fear of your town being taken over, of innocence being corrupted. It makes sense to have that with your main characters being teenagers and children. There are hardly any adults in this movie. Like obviously Michael is an adult and Loomis is an adult and the sheriff is there. But otherwise it's all teenagers and kids. They're all home alone by themselves. And so what's happening here is as these teens venture into adulthood and lose their innocence, they are punished for it. If you think about, I think so, because I mean that one of this classic trope in the slasher subgenre. That's hard to say.
Subgenre.
Slasher subgenre. And the slasher subgenre is, oh, the kids who are having sex are punished for it. Like, oh, they're off having sex in the woods and they're punished. And in here, what happens is like, okay, let's break it down. Annie, is that her name? Annie, the really annoying one who sucks.
That describes multiple characters.
I think that's Annie. The Lindsay, the one who does the laundry. She gets killed in the car. She's wearing the sweater vest. Yeah, the brunette.
Maybe that's a better way.
Maybe that's a better way. Yeah. Sorry. Annie is killed.
Annie? That doesn't sound right at all.
Oh, fuck. Okay. In the comments down below, tell me. I'm never going to know her fucking name.
She's with Paul.
Right.
She keeps talking about
Paul. I'm going to call her. But that's the thing. She's going to call Paul. She is going to stop taking care of this child and instead have sex with her boyfriend and invite him over and then have sex with him. Right. So she's going to venture, destroy
in
her.
That order.
Yeah. She's going to destroy her own innocence and,
Jesus Christ.
That's what I'm saying though. She's
No, but do you think are you saying that is the filmmakers are saying?
I think that's the rules. I don't listen. Okay. This might be getting into our second question about why Michael does what he does, but I think you
think Michael's a Puritan? He's punishing.
I think
deviancy?
thematically, it's not that you shouldn't have sex. I think what the movie is sort of exploring is as these teenagers venture into adulthood, they sort of are stopped from that. They're punished for that, because if you think about Annie, she's trying to have sex with her boyfriend. She's home alone. Like an adult. If you think about Linda, the other girl, the tall blonde, she not only is having sex with her boyfriend, she's smoking pot and drinking beer. And so she's also doing this adult thing, but she's not an adult. And so she is killed for that. And the boyfriend is also killed. But then Laurie is, of course, our, virginal final girl. And she is not doing that. And so she survives. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I think this is something people say, but I don't know how much I believe any of it, because I think it's interesting that so much of the dialogue around Laurie is her being attracted to Ben Tramer.
Well, so yeah, but it's in an innocent way. It's not you're not allowed to be in love or have a crush, but it's like, I
don't think her feelings for him are any more pure or wholesome than the other girls for their boyfriends. If anything, I think there's a mild aspirational jealousy that she feels towards the other girls being more mature.
Let me redefine it a bit. I think it's a bit more like from a societal lens. Like if you think about, she and Annie are driving around and Annie is driving a car on her own, which is an adult thing to do. And she's smoking pot, which is also an adult thing to do. And Laurie is in the car and Laurie smokes some of the pot because her friend kind of pressures her to. But and then of course they come upon Annie's father, who's a sheriff, and she's like, oh fuck, throw the joint away.
Great sideburns on the dad.
Oh, it's so good. Oh. But I think it's more the societal fear of kids growing up too fast. That's what's here. So like Annie and Linda are growing up too fast and their innocence is corrupted too quickly, versus Laurie, who is more innocent than the other two. You know, they keep talking about she never goes out. She doesn't, you know, have a boyfriend. She, you know, is always studying. And she's also protecting younger children and protecting their innocence. Instead of babysitting Lindsay, Annie drops her off with Laurie. And Laurie instead works to protect the innocence of Lindsay and Tommy. And I think that's sort of how she's distinguished from the other ones who end up dying.
So is the idea that the movie is almost a morality play or a fable? Because then we have to get into like who's punishing this sexuality.
I think it's societal. I think that's what it is. I think society.
But society didn't write the movie.
No, but I think that the commentary is that societally, Laurie is somebody who is not looked down upon the way that somebody like Annie or Linda would be. Because I think it's also interesting that Michael, when he kills his sister, he does it after she has just presumably had sex with her boyfriend and is sitting naked in her room. And so he is also sort of punishing her for the corruption of her own innocence. Do you know what I mean?
It's interesting, the corruption of innocence, I think, is an interesting phrase that you keep going back to. Because if this is some kind of morality play or cautionary tale, or however you want to interpret it as this sort of moral fable, it's interesting that if you act out of turn, if you do the forbidden thing, you're murdered.
Right.
Like I'm trying to kind of play out your hypothetical here and wonder what the moral would then be. Because then it sounds like you're doing the Mean Girls thing of you'll have sex and die.
Right.
And I don't know if that's an effect, because I'm thinking of old school moral stories and morality plays, and they're usually more empathetic at the end. They're cautionary tales that kind of wag the finger at the end.
Sure,
we've talked about, I don't need to do a Faustus thing, but we've talked about that. And you have the chorus coming out at the end and saying, hey, all of this happened to this guy because he asked for more than heavenly power doth permit. So there is that element. And I don't see that at all in Halloween.
I don't think it's a morality play. I think it's more sort of saying this is how society like responds to or rewards or punishes people based on adhering to certain standards.
So then Michael Myers is society.
I guess
Or
so.
kind of this agent of society. Because that's where I think the whole thing falls apart. I want to look at this from another... And this isn't in the notes. I'm just kind of riffing with you here.
Fine,
but
yeah.
if you look at the perspective of the writers making this movie, so John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, I think this is a fairly... And again, I'm not from that generation, so I guess I can't say whether or not it's accurate. But as someone who was once a stupid teenager, this feels accurate enough.
To like how teens are?
Yeah,
sure.
They're self-obsessed and they're kind of
mean.
shitty. They're mean to their parents. They're kind of mean to their friends.
They're selfish.
Totally.
But also they mess with each other and they call each other all the time.
They're getting too big for their britches.
Right.
And they're occasionally really stupid. Like Laurie dropping the knife at the end is infuriating for the audience.
But you're like, but she's a kid and she's panicking, so of course she does that.
But if you're coming from that perspective of, okay, we've got this killer who's going to one by one kill all of our cast, and you're going for some level of realism in the way you're writing teens, I feel like they're showing what teens would do. If you have an opportunity and your parents aren't there, they're going to invite Paul over.
Well, yeah, of course. But again,
I don't know if there has to be a societal critique in that. I don't know if there has to be some sort of puritanical reflection of the age and the values. On some level, I think it's a slasher. If you're going to write a slasher, you either start from some complicated lore or you start from some cool kills like Eli Roth has always talked about. You start with a cool kill you want to film and you build a movie around it.
Sure. I mean,
and them being stupid or selfish or, more importantly, distracted because they're having sex with whoever, that makes it easier for Michael to set up a cool kill. I just don't know if there has to be a larger message or societal critique in every slasher.
I totally understand that. And I think you don't even have to look at it as that here. I mean, I think you can I think it works if you look at it like that. But I think it could also be more just a meditation upon this is an issue that we are concerned with or interested in or preoccupied by is when do you become an adult? When is it acceptable to become an adult? How is it, how do you best venture from childhood into adulthood? Because again, there are hardly any adults in this movie. And instead it's these teens who are sort of struggling between these two parts of life, which is childhood and adulthood. I mean, that's such a difficult time. I mean, one of the things that I noticed this time watching that I hadn't really noticed before, Laurie says to herself, I think I forget which moment it is, but it's Michael has scared her and she thought he saw him and then she didn't, or she thinks that she didn't see him, but we know she did. But she says to herself, well, kiddo, I thought you outgrew your superstition. And I think right there, that perfectly cements her in that in-between. She calls herself a kid, but she's also saying, I thought you'd outgrown something. And so she like is also recognizing, I am both a child and an adult, and I don't know what to do with that. And you see her struggle with that by protecting the younger children, protecting Tommy and Lindsay, which she does a pretty good job at. She really prioritizes them. She tells them to lock themselves in the bathroom. She's very quick on her feet, but also she cowers in the corner because she's like, what, 16? And she's terrified and she's a kid. But you don't see her interact with her parents really. She tells her dad she'll go drop the key at the house, but like that's it. And she's really in this in between, as are her friends. And I think that's like the struggle that this movie is meditating on, is how do you navigate that time, and how do we as adults navigate those people who were in that time? How do we reward them? What do we encourage them to do? How do we raise them correctly? Like it's a really interesting sort of meditation. If you don't want to extrapolate it as far as a message or critique, you can just call it a meditation.
I think it's because the movie is set in the precipice of these people right before they go to adulthood. But I don't see any great social critique in the idea that the death of innocence that we're talking about, what that means in the context of this movie is that you'll have sex and be killed. That's not death of innocence. That's just death.
Well, right. I mean, Michael's, if you want to like pull it out and think, okay, this is Michael being logical, it is flawed. But of course it is, because he himself is corrupted at age 6 and never has a full childhood. And he's 21 years old. It's 15 years after he killed his sister when he was 6. So he's 21. So he's also barely an adult. I mean, his brain isn't even done.
Do you think he gives a fuck about any of the people he kills in this movie? I think you're ascribing way too much of him like journaling about them and punishing them for their lives.
Well, this is where I kind of want to talk about your second question, if we can.
No, I'm not there yet.
Okay.
Because the other thing I was going to say is, if this is some... I also think there's a creepiness to... This is a weird thing, because I've heard people talk about this forever, and we've never really talked about it on the show, but there are a lot of weird downstream implications of these theories that people kind of unthinkingly... and I'm not saying you're doing this, but that people usually kind of glom onto this with the virginal final girl.
Yeah.
Because I think it kind of suggests that whoever's making the movie has this weird kind of creepy...
like puritanical...
like they're idolizing virginity.
Yeah.
And having seen other John Carpenter movies, I don't think that's him.
No, I think you're right.
Also, it's not like the purity of Jamie Lee Curtis's character means that she's the one who rises up and kills Michael, because she doesn't kill Michael.
No, it's true.
She loses long enough that Loomis can come in and shoot him 80 times and not kill him.
Right.
So I don't even think there is this, if you're looking at the morality play angle, I don't think there's a condemnation of the people who have sex any more than I think there is an endorsement of the people who don't. I don't think it works in either direction.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think there are different ways to look at it, and I think one is simple. But again, even that sort of that interpretation of, oh, the teens who have sex are punished, that's reflective of societal expectations. Like that's Christian Puritan thinking, right? Is you shouldn't be off in the woods having sex with your boyfriend because that makes you, a terrible whore and you're going to hell, so you should be killed, that's an extreme version.
No,
but,
I totally agree.
Like a lot of people think that because a lot of people think that,
Oh, sure. And there's so much, I feel like so much of the horror genre is steeped in religion, and you don't have to be The Exorcist for that to be the case.
Right.
But I don't really find any religion in this movie.
No, there's no mention of... And no one's wearing a cross on their necklace or anything. Like you don't really see it reflect. You don't even see a church in this small town. Like it's distinctly not in this movie.
And I feel like we tee up some ideas that would otherwise very obviously become religious commentary or subtext. Like when Laurie's in school and they're talking about fate, and the teacher says like fate can't change.
Right.
That would become a kind of theological grindstone through the rest of almost any other horror movie. But I think that's just kind of hype for Michael Myers being this inevitable force. I don't see a religious element, so I resist this reading of the movie where Michael is this quiet Puritan punishing all the sexual deviants.
Well, then
I don't see it.
Then maybe what it is... Sorry, our rice cooker is going off. I'm sure y'all can't hear it, but I can. It's distracting me, so you have to fucking hear about it. Then perhaps the commentary here or the message here could be that the corruption of innocence is inevitable. Like maybe that's what Michael represents, is growing up is inevitable. You cannot stay an innocent child forever. Maybe that's more what it is.
Okay, I think it is inevitable, but I don't think the film is also saying that it's bad or that you deserve to die for it.
Well, perhaps it's more we're terrified of that, and let's explore that. I think that's where
we though.
Adults, parents.
So not the characters in the movie the people who made the movie.
No.
Or Michael?
People watching it, adults. Parents are terrified of their children growing up. Sure. Nobody wants that.
I think they're more scared of their children dying.
Sure, but even like you and I who don't have children, but we are old enough now that kids feel so young to us, like teens feel so young, but I'm terrified of them being working adults and voting because they're so like different than you and I. And they feel like every generation thinks that the generation behind them is stupid and worse. And so that's a constant, like evergreen American societal fear,
I think if that was true, and I think that's an interesting reading of the story, I think if it was true, Michael's parents would be in the fucking movie.
Interesting.
And they're not at all.
No, you don't even see their faces. You do at the very, sorry, you do for a second, but yeah.
Because I think it's hard because I feel like I'm kind of seeing double or seeing triple talking about Halloween because I can't divorce the 2007 and 2018 films, also called Halloween, which are more or less reboot remakes of the original, because those are both incredibly invested in family, way more than the original 1978.
And just in Michael as a human.
Yeah, and Michael's parents. I mean, we see what happens to Michael's mother in the Rob Zombie version. And 2018 is all about Laurie Strode's kids and that sort of legacy. I just don't see it in the 78.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why it's so elemental, because and I think that's part of, to pull back to the question, why I think it's probably the best slasher, because it faints in these directions. It opens up these questions, but I don't think it even provides enough breadcrumbs for me to make a stupid art. I mean, I thought about doing a Faustus thing. I just don't think it's there.
I think that's totally fair. It is just a little like, here's a little idea, nugget to chew on, to think about, but there's not a clear, like, conclusive morality here or message or critique. It's more, here's some stuff that we are terrified of. Let's think about that for an hour and a half and explore that.
And I like that it doesn't narrate the themes or explain any of that too much, because as much as it does gesture at all these interesting ideas, it still feels conclusive, to use the word you just threw out there. The film feels complete. That was one of the notes I had on here, which again feels kind of stupid and counterintuitive, but it is a testament to the film, where you have this gestural ending of, was Michael real? Was he a supernatural force that disappeared into the ether, like Voldemort going into confetti?
He's the boogeyman.
Yeah. Or did he get up and run away because he can't be killed, and he's this guy on this fender, blah, blah, blah. That's all there. There is this ambiguous ending. There's this mystery that they're stoking. There's a mythical element to Michael Myers that they're inviting. But it's also just a satisfying ending of like, oh, she escaped, she'll be fine.
Right.
You kind of assume maybe he'll pop up somewhere else when someone else knocks on his door and bugs him, and maybe he'll go kill them. But I like how open-ended it is, because you can go watch all of the sequels. I wouldn't recommend that you do, but you can go watch all the other movies.
They're interesting, yeah.
Or, and I think this is almost more valuable, you can kind of just go think about it.
Right.
You can think about the ending of the film and just chew on it and dream up the future of what happens to Michael. You can think about the past and fill in a lot of the gaps that it just, again, sort of gestures at in the prologue sequence.
You can think about Laurie and how this impacts her for the rest of her life.
It's participatory, and I think we've seen that through some of the remakes and sequels where they've done a lot of that interpretive work. I just don't think almost any of that is heavy-handed or really present in the original.
Agreed, and I think that's why all of these sequels and remakes and reboots and requels and everything don't feel as strong, because they get a little too specific. And I still enjoy them. Like, it's not like the Rob Zombie Halloween. I really like. Like, I think it's a great movie, but it's so different from this, and it doesn't make me think about the same things. It's a totally different experience. And I think this, in its simplicity and its elemental quality that you talk about, I think is so effective and perfect.
Two more things I wanted to hit on this question before we move on to the other one. The first, I was so impressed by Loomis and Donald Pleasance's performance
He's so
this
excellent.
time.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about this before as we've seen more of The Matrix, watching so many horror movies and getting to know the template, the blueprint for all of these slasher movies. The expert character. Or maybe it's someone Googling and they look at some woodcuts and then they go fight the demon.
Yeah, they check out a special book at the library.
Yeah, usually that's shitty. Usually it's some guest star doing some...
I'm not going to lie, I always enjoy that, as silly as it can be.
Okay, but usually it's one of those moments where you're not nervous. It doesn't feel like there's any danger. It is one of those safe exposition scenes where you can relax.
It can be exciting, but it's not tense. Yeah.
I don't love relaxing in a horror movie.
Sure.
And I think this expert...
I don't think you love relaxing, period. Cam.
Well, I don't know how to relax, but that's a different podcast. This expert figure is so rewarding because he gives you all the necessary details and exposition, and you get to know he watched Michael for 6 years and then spent 8 years making sure he never got out. But that's like 10 words of dialogue that gestures, again, at the breadth and depth of this character. But most of what Loomis is doing, he's kind of like a hype man for Michael Myers.
Genuinely, yeah.
He's spending all of his screen time talking about how dangerous and scary the monster is. Mm-hmm. And that's incredibly rewarding in a totally different way. And Donald Pleasance knows exactly what he's doing. He is magnetic in this role because he's so varied. It felt like I was watching young Al Pacino and old Al Pacino at the same time. Because there are moments like when he's in the car with the nurse at the beginning. That reminds me of young Al Pacino in the first Godfather, where he's incredibly soft-spoken. There's something subtle and mature and brooding, but not in a selfish sort of way, where he's thinking deeply and he's troubled by things. But it's almost a stage whisper sort of theatricality. And then most of the rest of the movie, he's doing old Al Pacino, which is big and theatrical.
Yeah.
And, she's got a great ass. And they're both really fun to watch. And rewarding in different ways. And I think together they make this really iconic character. I know Laurie Strode is the character from this franchise, but I feel like Loomis is the special sauce in this first film.
I mean, I think it's really a three-legged stool. You've got his incredible and like hyperbolic in some ways and very subtle in other ways performance that is really, important and hyping up Michael. Then you've got Michael himself, who is incredibly stoic and slow and scary and looming and, tense and horrifying in that way. And then you've got Laurie, who's like, she's your straight man, but a teenage girl. She's normal, she's kind, she's thoughtful, she's innocent, and she's like just like your average normal person. And she's really, she's her own character, but you can also she's kind of got a Bella Swan quality where you can map yourself onto her because she's the quiet nerdy girl, which many of us are.
Honestly,
so it makes sense.
I think Michael is that way too because he's silent. Yes, you're reading the physicality of the performance. There's a lot there that you can chew on, but so much of what we graft onto Michael Myers, what we're afraid of, what we think of, is stuff that Loomis tells us. He's so much of Michael Myers' characterization in this film because he's so wildly silly and charming, but also deeply dramatic and doing that full theatric. You can see like the way stage actors spit all over the place.
Right.
He's doing that kind of performance where he's performing for the back rows. It's such a charming, over-the-top performance that he creates this larger-than-life monster. It's almost a Frankenstein-like relationship.
Well, and I think that contrast between Loomis and Michael is also evident between Laurie and her friends because her friends are, like I said earlier, they're not acting very well. They're kind of overdoing it. Her friends are either really stupid or really mean. You've got, the tall girl saying totally every 5 words. And I don't ever need my chemistry book. I don't bring any of my books. Totally. And then you've got Annie, who's just a bitch. She's just mean and she's rude to her friend. She's rude to her dad. She's rude to the girl she's babysitting. She's annoying and loud and mean. And these are all things that Laurie is not. Laurie is not mean. She's nice. She's not loud. She's, quiet and respectful. She's not stupid. She's really smart. And she even says, boys think I'm too smart, and she's a little awkward and not very confident versus these two girls who are, or at least who present very confident. We know that actually stems from deep insecurity, but whatever. But so the contrast I think is essential for building up both Michael and Laurie.
Totally. It all works in tandem. I think that's a great point. It does all develop together. And I think that goes to the efficiency we talked about earlier, where you can develop the characterization of so many people at once.
Right. And Jamie Lee Curtis's performance is very like measured and nuanced and well done compared to the performance of her friends who are over the top.
The last thing I wanted to say about why this is the best slasher film is just that it is immortal in a way that is sort of difficult to explain, because we've seen this movie in so many different formats. We've seen it on TV with a shitty Amazon Prime rental. We've seen it in the perfect theater setting with the lights down and everyone paying attention. We've seen it at a drive-in where the projector's kind of funky and I don't know, it looks okay.
Yeah, right.
But the sound is sort of shitty through the radio and the timing's a little off and you're getting snacks and whatever, and you've seen, we're probably bullshitting a little bit during the movie.
Right.
We've also seen the most ratty-ass 35 millimeter projection of this movie where
incredible.
The sound was in and out, the color was in and out. And we've watched this with friends or we babble through the whole thing.
Right.
And the funny thing is, it's fantastic in every single one of those formats. And to the point that it reminds me of something else that was big in 1978, which is my beloved Black Sabbath.
Oh.
We did an episode a couple months ago, after Ozzy died, rest in peace, about the first Black Sabbath song being a Faust Fable. Go check that out. But any Black Sabbath song, if you throw on War Pigs on any sound system ever invented, it sounds great. If you have $3,000 speakers, if you have $500 headphones, if you have a tiny $4 ham radio from Goodwill, the thing about Sabbath is that it doesn't just sound good on everything. We've driven in cars with completely blown out speaker systems, and they can still make Sabbath sound amazing, to the point that I test it on every car, every headphone, every speaker. Anytime I encounter a sound system, and by doing a podcast for 5 years, I love all this audio shit. I do audio dramas. Audio is my whole thing. The thing with Sabbath is that it almost sounds better when it's worse. And it works on every single sound system. I think Halloween is just as bulletproof and dynamic.
Yeah, 100%. It's delightful to watch and experience in every way. And most movies are not like that.
No,
and
not
so
at
that's
all.
like really incredible. Yeah, this movie rocks.
Fantastic.
Before we get into our second question, quick jump scare to plug the Patreon. We've been talking about the Patreon a couple times, just sprinkled here and there, and it's a really fun place to be. Our Patreon is $2 a month. For that low price, you can, of course, support the show, but also get access to 2 bonus episodes every single month. Do you get it? Second Breakfast, $2 a month, 2 bonus episodes. There are 2 of us. What else is there 2 of? A lot of things. Anyway, it's a great time. We get 2 bonus episodes every month, which are often the Breakfast Buffet, which is a long-running series wherein we cover multiple things in the same episode, often in connection and relation to one another. It's a really, really fun place.
Over 100 works of art we've discussed in that series.
I was going to say, of course, by joining the Patreon, you also get access to all of this back catalog of bonus episodes. So not just the new ones every month, but also all of the stuff we've done in the past. So there's a lot over there.
And plenty of horror.
I was going to say, a lot of horror. My favorite one that I love to plug is our episode on female body horror. I think that came out in like March of 2024.
It was an early buffet.
So like a year and a half ago-ish. Really excellent discussion that we had over there. It was 5 movies and it was really fun to talk about those.
Also Black Christmas, like we mentioned before.
Oh, is that Patreon?
Yes, both of, I believe so.
Yeah,
both of the Strangers reboot movies we've muscled through. We just talked about Good Boy in a recent buffet. There's tons over there.
Yeah, so go please check that out. The links for that in the description, but we're just Second Breakfast Pod over on Patreon. Thank you very much for your support. Okay, Cam, what is your second question? Why does Michael do what he does?
Yeah, and this was another one of me trying to kind of check my priors, not miss the forest for the trees, and just look at this inscrutable character who kills so many people in very strange ways. When you watch the movie the first time, you're just kind of interested and you're so taken by the film. You're seeing how beautiful it looks, and then he's putting on glasses and he's putting on a sheet and he's getting kind of weirdly creative, and now there's a tombstone, and I feel like you don't dig into those the first time. You just think, we've got a bunch of teenagers, we got to kill them off in order.
Right.
And he does that, and then he survives at the end. That's your takeaway is, damn, that was really fucking good. That was a perfect hour and a half. But there's so much more there that I think we can play with. So I think the way to investigate those actions is to ask, why does Michael Myers do what he does? What motivates these murders? And I've got 4 different options we can play with, and I'm sure you'll bring some to the table too.
Sure, yeah, because of course the easiest answer is, well, he's just evil. And that's sort of what the movie, I think, on its surface primes you to think is he's not a person. Like, that's what Loomis's whole thing is. Like, there's nothing in there to help, right? There's nothing in there to understand. I spend the last 6, 8, whatever it is, years making sure he never leaves. He never escapes. And because he's just purely and simply evil. There's nothing behind the eyes. He's just evil. His only goal is to kill. But that's obviously not what it is, because
you think?
I don't think so, because not only do his kills feel targeted and not random, and if anything, he plays with his food. Him stalking Laurie for an entire day and a half is not just him wanting to kill Laurie. If his goal was to kill Laurie, he could have done it way earlier in the movie. Not to mention he does the thing by putting the sheet on, like you said, and putting the tombstone in the bed. Like, he's not, and like watching the couple make out on the couch rather than killing them right there. Like, there is a playing with your food weird element to it, and it's not just, I'm here to kill.
I think you're probably right, but I want to take a minute kind of playing devil's advocate to see if it does work with it being totally random.
Okay.
Because that was my first impulse. We did an episode on the original Brian Bertino Strangers film, which is probably the best masked home invasion movie ever made. I think that one goes toe-to-toe with this.
Yeah, but it's a different kind of thing.
Totally different sensibility, but it will scare the dog shit out of you.
Yep.
Incredible film. It made me jump multiple times in the theater, which doesn't really happen anymore.
No, I jump all the time, but you don't.
And the idea there, you've got some masked people tormenting and torturing these people who are in this Airbnb or whatever. And when they're asked at the end why they did this, why they're tormenting these people specifically in this way, there is no explanation, and they just say, because you were home. So there's no explanation, there's no grand plan, it's just pure random evil, I guess. Like
Purely and simply evil.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is kind of testing the Loomis hypothesis. And I don't know. So him killing the sister, yes, there could be some puritanical vengeance of she just had sex upstairs, so she has to be punished. I don't know. But I think if you're looking at it from the stranger's angle of total random evil because they were home, maybe he just kills her because she was the only one home. She was the only person there to kill. He had a knife. His parents weren't there. Maybe he felt more capable. She was distracted, like we talked about before. That makes people more vulnerable. So he kills her.
Sure.
There is a random reading of him killing the sister. And even when he walks outside, he's not a mustache twirling villain.
No, he doesn't have a plan. Just kind of standing there. Yeah.
He doesn't seem to know what the fuck he did or why.
And to be fair, the people that he kills or tries to kill in the rest of the movie are like easy targets. You know, they're young girls home alone with like other kids. Like, of course he's going to kill them.
And I think that is the second question that really tests this devil's advocate of, okay, if it's all random and doesn't matter, then why does he spend a day and a half stalking Laurie Strode? And I was watching the movie this time trying to answer that question to see if there's any merit to this perspective. And I kind of think there is.
Okay.
So at the beginning, she says to her dad, I'll drop off the keys at the house because he's a realtor or whatever, and she's going to school. The kid's carrying the books without a backpack, which is weird.
I think that was just
Everyone's carrying pumpkins. It's a weird movie.
I think just carrying your books was just a thing they did back in the day.
I think it visually codes that you're a student.
Yeah.
It keeps us from thinking that you're probably 30, you know, the brother in Hannah Montana being 65. And anyway.
Right.
Laurie goes to the house to slip the thing through the mail slot. Michael's already there.
Right.
He's at home. He's escaped. He's in the house. He knows he knows his sister is dead, and he can tell by the condition of the house when he gets there that his parents aren't there.
Right.
And the house seems to be abandoned. So if you're Michael Myers, and I don't want to ascribe too much cognition because I don't know what the fuck's going on up there.
Sure, yeah.
He goes to a house that seems to be abandoned that is his. No one's bothering him. And he knows he just ran away from a hospital, so he doesn't want to be bothered by anyone.
Sure, he doesn't want to be caught, yeah.
Someone goes to the house and knocks on the door. That person I think it's fairly logical that person would become the next target. Right. So maybe you can look at it as Laurie Strode was just the first person who bothered him. Because if you were on the run, if you were in hiding, and someone knocks on the door of your house, that person would become an issue for you. They would become a problem. So if he wanted to maintain that anonymity and continue being on the run, snuffing out Laurie could become the pathway towards that.
Very true, yeah. And maybe he decides to stalk her all day so that he can kill her when it's more convenient and there aren't witnesses.
And playing the other side of this, again, I think by that logic, maybe he would have killed his parents because they turned him in.
Right.
Or maybe he would kill Loomis. Maybe Loomis would be the priority. Yeah. So I just wanted to play it out because I think there is a reading there. There is so much ambiguity in the film that I think you could go the stranger's route of it being totally random and, like you were talking about the teenagers, completely self-interested.
Right.
To the point that there isn't any deeper lore. It's just basic survival and wants and needs. But there is something more mercurial happening here. The way he's called the boogeyman, I noticed that so many times during this viewing of the film. He is unknowable. He's immortal, seemingly. We keep hyping him up in a way that suggests he's supernatural. He can't be killed. The way he sits up after he's stabbed in the neck, it just feels otherworldly.
Sure.
So I guess maybe you can just gesture at that and say he is a pure manifestation of fear without explanation or logic. He's almost Lovecraftian, where he's this otherworldly thing that we gesture at and can never fully understand.
Sure, because you can't ever get rid of fear. You can squash it temporarily, you can distract yourself, you can do other things, you can overcome a fear in a way, but the idea of fear itself is never going to go away. So yeah, that also makes sense.
Do you like that reading more than the other one?
I'd like that more just because that feels more interesting to me, because I don't think it's doing the terrifying idea of randomness the way that The Strangers is. I don't think it's, I mean, because if they are, it's not as effective. I mean, as we've been saying, this movie is incredibly effective, but it's not doing the same thing that The Strangers is doing. So I'm more inclined to align with him being this manifestation of a intangible idea of fear or paranoia or corruption, but probably fear. Yeah.
Without the devil's advocate thing, where were you going to go with that relationship with Laurie?
Well, I was still thinking about this idea of innocence and the corruption of innocence, to think about maybe why Michael does what he does. So I like that you brought up Michael being in the house, because that's what I was thinking about too. Because I thought, okay, why does he break out of prison, period? I mean, one, you don't want to be there, so cool. But also the whole little, subtitle movie is The Night He Came Home. So he's coming back to his family home on the 15th anniversary of the event that sets his whole life into motion, or I guess pauses his life, which is he kills his sister. So presumably he breaks out because he wants to, I don't know, relive the moment, or maybe he's confused and wants to find his sister or find his parents, or who knows, but he goes back to his family home for personal reasons. But then he sees Laurie, but he doesn't just see Laurie as, oh, she's a young girl. She's doing, again, kind of an adult thing. She's like doing this adult errand for her dad of dropping off this key at this house. She is on her own, and she's also sort of watching over and taking care of Tommy. She's like almost taking on a parental role because they're on this walk together, and she's not talking to him like a mom. She's talking to him like a babysitter,
But Tommy's a 6-year-old boy like Michael was.
Well, yeah. And so she's sort of like she is, not that she's not innocent, but it's more, I think it's less about innocence and more about traversing into adulthood. I wonder if that's the thing that sort of sets him off, is she is acting like an adult even though she's not one. Because again, if you go back to his initial incident of killing his sister, he does that after his sister has stepped into adulthood when she's not an adult. And so I think it's sort of that's again, this is not my opinion. This is not my opinion.
Little Michael upstairs enforcing the rules.
I think that's part of it, right? And he doesn't even get his own childhood, so maybe that's messes with his own perception of childhood and adulthood as well. But so he sees Laurie, a teenager, stepping into adulthood, and maybe that sort of changes.
Not on my watch.
So that changes his course of action. So he stalks her and her friends and notices, oh, they're also breaching into adulthood,
right,
corrupting their own innocence,
smoking weed.
They gotta go too, right? So I think it's something like that. I think that might be part of it, because again, he's not killing random adults, he's not killing cops, he's not killing Loomis even, which would be a very personal thing for him to pursue. He tries to kill Loomis when Loomis tries to kill him, but that feels more self-defense than anything else. He doesn't stalk Loomis, because you could have seen Michael stalking Laurie for a bit and then going back to the Myers house and looking at Loomis through the bushes, but he doesn't. He's only focused on these
misbehaving teenagers.
Exactly. I think it's something, I mean, I don't think that's the only explanation, but I think if I want to continue with that idea from earlier, I think that's sort of where I think about it. You don't seem to be on board.
No, I love this like hall monitor reading of Michael Myers.
I think it's, I don't think it's a super conscious thing. I don't think he's really got a morality system that he's laid out for himself. He's not John Doe from Seven, but I think it's more that he's just, his sort of, the thing that steers him is this like, this innocence concern, or this, how do you toe adulthood and childhood, and
but is a 6-year-old thinking about that?
Again, I don't think it's super conscious. I think
But it is a lifelong preoccupation.
I think he is a representation of our fear of adults, of children growing up, our fear of teens becoming adults. So I think he sort of, not as a person, but just as a character, as a figure in the movie, represents how we address and tackle that and what our fears are. He's afraid of Lori, this young girl growing up. He's afraid of Judith, his sister, growing up. He's afraid of Annie and what's her fucking name? Not Tina. What's her name? Linda growing up. They all have the most like boring names. So
Tina, eat your ham.
Which is perfect because like they have to be like, again, Bella Swan. You can implant yourself into them. But like, so he's a representation of our fear of these people growing up, and that's why he's killing them.
Anxieties about maturity and adolescence.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Let me try
I think whenever I'm talking about this, it's very like metaphorical and very like abstract. It's not like him, the character, sitting there thinking, my sister is upstairs being naughty, I better kill her. I don't think it's that human or real. That
would be a very funny reboot, though. If you remade it from that angle.
That would be really funny.
He'd have to have little glasses. And yeah. I think I can meet you halfway and kind of play a similar but different fiddle here. So let's try to interpret what Michael does and why he does it through the lens of punishing women. Because you were talking about the distinctly American feel of so much of this.
Yeah.
And if we are to consider Michael Myers as a serial killers kill women. Yep. That is a statistic. I think we did a true crime. We've done multiple true crime episodes over on the Patreon.
The vast majority, it's women. It's young women.
Exactly.
Young, vulnerable women.
Right. And if they can get them, probably teenagers.
Right.
So it's exactly the same victim pool that slashers traditionally pull from.
Sure.
So let's look at it through that lens of punishing women, because he starts by killing his sister, but he doesn't kill the boyfriend. He has the element of surprise.
He could have killed the boyfriend.
He could kill the boyfriend while the boyfriend is leaving.
Right.
He was distracted enough that he could have gotten him. We saw him trying to put on his shirt and he wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
Michael could have killed him there. He could have killed him in the yard. He could have gone after the parents one by one when they came home. He could have tried to kill Loomis 100,000 times, especially if he's actually immortal.
Right.
The showdown, the little duel that they have at the end of the movie, he could have absolutely killed him.
Sure.
And he doesn't. He only kills teenage girls. He only kills traditional serial killer victims.
What about Linda's boyfriend?
Yeah, I mean, that's just him kind of having some fun. Before we get there.
Sure, okay, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that one could just be so there is no witness, I guess.
Yeah,
he's almost an incidental killer.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But throughout the film, we see so much nudity. And I think it's interesting how Michael plays into that. Because yes, movies of that era had a different sensibility about nudity, specifically female nudity.
Sure.
And there's a voyeurism. We talked about the male gaze. There's all of that there. But I think it's interesting how much the voyeurism of the film's approach to nudity is specifically centered in Michael. Where there are whole scenes, especially right there from the prologue, where Michael's watching people have sex. Yeah. He's watching people undress. And the pumpkin that we see in the intro sequence, I feel like that becomes kind of a motif for Michael in his absence, because the movie's called Halloween, and we think of Michael Myers. And I was so struck by the shot of the brunette girl that he kills and puts on the bed next to the headstone of his sister. We're seeing kind of an over-the-shoulder shot of him surveying his work there. But there's a pumpkin on the bedside table that's lit up and looks happy and excited, that's watching this whole scene play out and come together. And I think the way pumpkins are faces that are unfeeling, totally expressionless, kind of immortal and otherworldly, and all they do is watch. I think it's interesting how much there is about voyeurism throughout this film and how it connects with specifically female nudity. So we seem to be setting the table for these. We're throwing out all these elements so many times that I think it has to be intentional in some way that we play with those elements and make them into some sort of theory. And the context, to kind of riff on something you were saying before, if Michael is arrested as a 6-year-old, he misses not only his entire childhood, but his entire adolescence. You said he's in his early 20s now.
He's 21, yeah.
So he's missed his entire sexual revolution.
Yeah.
His
awakening.
From a boy to a man. That whole period is gone for him.
Right.
Sexual maturity he completely missed out on. And through that lens of kind of this Arrested Development of missing all of these formative years, That's how I make sense of the scene with the sheet and the sunglasses, or regular glasses.
Regular glasses,
Tripped at the finish line.
That's okay.
Because he doesn't know, he must be having, and again, I don't know how much cognition to assume that he has if he is a boogeyman. But he doesn't know how to talk to women. But I imagine if he's a full-grown man, he has some libido, he has some sexual impulse, but he's never interacted with a woman he hasn't been killing.
Sure.
So there's no way that he's going to satisfy that urge, right? We don't really see him pursue that.
No, he doesn't, yeah.
Except for that scene with the sheet and the glasses. I think you can read that scene as him trying to almost go undercover and replace the boyfriend.
It's
almost like he's hoping she won't notice that they've swapped out.
I was going to say, he's like almost playing house. He's like playing dress up.
Yes.
Because it's not just that he puts the sheet on, he puts the glasses on, the boyfriend's glasses. And that's the closest he can get to impersonating the boyfriend because there's no other way. But so I think that's really interesting. And I think it's also not coincidental to take this further that the way that he kills people is by penetrating them with a very long object.
Fantastic.
He's not strangling them. He's not beating them to death. He's not throwing them off of a balcony. He is penetrating them.
But he doesn't seem to make that connection. In the same way, when he's standing there with the sheet and the glasses, he doesn't seem to know what he's doing or why he's doing it, but he feels some sort of impulse or compulsion that's making him do that.
Right.
Because he doesn't fake the voice. He doesn't try to be playful or familiar with her.
He doesn't really know what to do.
He fumbles.
Yeah.
He has the impulse, but he doesn't know how to act on it. And I think that's really interesting that he's similarly externalizing and acting upon that penetration. That's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Because the other element I caught here was, to go back to young Michael and the sister. Maybe you can make the argument, if we're going with little Puritan hall monitor Michael, that he feels threatened by her. No, by his sister transitioning into adulthood.
And maybe leaving him behind.
Yes, exactly. She's becoming the other. She's becoming a sexual being or an adult or just something he can't relate to or understand anymore.
A lot of younger siblings, especially when there's a big age gap, really struggle when their older siblings go off to college. Not just because they're leaving, but they feel like we're not peers anymore. We're not on the same team. So that's a totally natural fear and stressor. Yeah.
And in an equally Freudian way, maybe he's just jealous of the boyfriend.
The attention that...
the sister betraying him. By, you can read that a bunch of different ways.
And even you hear her say, I'm sure Michael's around somewhere. Like, it's very dismissive of him.
Exactly. So it's very easy to imagine that she is as shitty a babysitter to Michael as the other girls are later to their kids that they're babysitting.
Annie is to Lindsay.
So if we read the prologue as just Michael has a bad relationship with his sister, then I think we can read the rest of the movie. I think there's some evidence that he's kind of, in a clumsy sort of way, trying to atone for what he does in the prologue. Killing his sister and not really understanding the totality of what he's done. Where he's kind of returning to that lost childhood. He returns to his childhood house. And he steals his sister's headstone. And that move in itself, because he seems to have cleaned it off.
Right, it's not dirty. It's completely clean.
There's no dirt on the bed.
Yeah.
And we see the hole in the ground where it was, and sure enough, there's dirt there.
Yeah, and she's been dead for 15 years, so it's not a new grave.
There's something seemingly not just possessive, but sentimental about returning that gravestone back to the house where he killed her. There's something almost... I can't even say the word, empathic or sympathetic, in what he's doing there. Even though he killed her, there is something that might be atonement of him bringing back the headstone and then bringing the brunette babysitter that he kills, putting her body there too, and posing a new victim in front of the headstone. He's almost recreating the prologue in a way that he's like reclaiming the imagery of it. Maybe it's some sort of penance or apology. It's all fucking warped and evil and murderous, but there's something there.
Well, and the way that he poses her, it's like she's on a crucifix. Like her arms are stretched out, and it's not just her like lying dead, like with her arms flopped around. Like it's very posed and ritualistic and sacrificial. And so I don't know if he's acknowledging the sacrifice or the loss of his sister, or if he's trying to replay it or relive it, or if he's trying to atone. But it is something that's not just... Because if he just wanted to freak out Lori, I mean, he does that with having the boyfriend pop out of the closet and the Linda's body being in the closet. But the headstone with Annie is a different thing. It's not just to scare Laurie.
The other ones are just kind of tucked away. Right. Everything he does is a little bit clumsy. I don't think he's setting like Looney Tunes booby traps for Laurie Strode.
He's never done this before. This is the first. I mean, except for Judith, but he's never had to stage anything before. Right. So yeah, it's going to be a little clumsy.
But it's remarkable that you can read this one character's actions almost definitively in at least 4 different ways. You can go with the stranger's he's just random evil reading. You can go with the almost Lovecraftian boogeyman reading. You can go with the misogynistic serial killer punishing women angle, or you can go with this deeply personal bad relationship with his sister angle, conflicted, abstracted 6-year-old reading.
Or you can go hall monitor
yes,
Puritan Michael Myers.
And to almost roll this second question back into the first, I think this is part of why it's the best slasher movie. Because you are made to think about the slashing without being told how to think about it.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's why it's so fun. Yeah, because I think some other, imitators or other slashers that are, indebted to this movie are trying to be a little bit more overt.
If that central question is what motivates the murders, that's how I tried to open this part of the chat here. I think the answer is usually, who cares? And in this instance, I can
care a lot.
Firmly explain it in a bunch of different ways, but play devil's advocate for 3 more hours doing this.
And I like that I don't know.
Yes.
Because, again, I think that's what makes it so rewatchable, is you can take it a new direction every time. You can have it be a reflection of your own fears every time, even if those fears change. Like, I think that's what is helping this thing survive after 40, almost 50 years.
And I think, like you said at the beginning here, this character being iconic and eternal and evergreen and immortal and all those words which are such compliments to any work of fiction, I think it's interesting if you compare it to other slashers. When you think of, we just talked about Friday the 13th as part of this Summerween series, and the explanation there is about his mom. There's a very simple familial explanation for why he is the way he is and why he does what he does.
Yeah, the motivations are very clear in that one, yeah.
But Michael Myers is so much more than that and so much less. I don't know if you can say what motivates him, because you can always default to he is fear externalized.
Right. Can he be motivated at all? Does he have motivations? Does he feel or think?
He's almost a shapeshifter. You can do that kind of Pennywise reading of him taking all of these different forms in the way he appears to these people and the way that he kills them. The strangling versus the dressing up versus it's almost the resurrections that he does to take out Laurie Strode, who seems to be the most pure and I guess Christian coded. It's interesting that he resurrects like 3 different times when she thinks he's dead. But I think that's the big thing with this movie. You don't know what motivates him, but you want to figure it out.
Right. And you never will.
Like every sequel to this movie, every sequel to a requel to a reboot, they all feel like a response to the first movie, even when they're within some other larger lore or embarrassing plotline.
Right.
They all feel like responses to the first movie. And if we are going to endlessly franchise and sequelize a horror movie, I think it should be this one, because there's so much to respond to, and there are so many perspectives, so many interesting angles you can take.
Right. They're all answers to the questions that this movie asks. And I don't think all of the answers are right, but they're all interesting, even if some are better than others, but they're all interesting. And it's just infinitely, malleable.
Totally.
You can play with this, for infinity. It's great.
To throw to the audience, if you've ever thought about this kind of shit, I mean, just to rephrase it again, what do you think motivates Michael Myers? Why does he do what he does?
Right. And why is this the best slasher ever?
Absolutely.
I would love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead. Sorry.
So as a little treat, because this is the end of Summerween, we, as Maggie previewed before, we assembled these little clips, which means I had to listen to a whole day worth of our podcast.
Yes.
And, most of them were all right. It wasn't all that. But the ones that I mentioned before, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Jaws, the Early Fellowships, Malignant, Alien Romulus, Thanksgiving, Nosferatu, Mailbag, those are all there for your perusal if you like. But the 3 that I thought were most fruitful to kind of accent the conversation we're having right now are the clips we're going to play for you here. So we're going to do little introductions. We'll throw to the clips. We'll come back. We'll introduce the next clip. We've got these 3 to show you.
Now, before we do that, actually, another jump scare, another plug. Pew, 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 pew. Have you guys heard of Lemon Tarts in Space? No, it's Cam's latest book. Cam's an author, did you know? Lemon Tarts in Space is a light sci-fi dark comedy. If you like any of the ideas that Cam has shared here today or on the show ever, if you like listening to his voice, if you like his sense of humor, if you like the way he thinks, you're going to love Lemon Tarts. It is so much fun. You can read it as a regular book, which is really delightful time, or better yet, listen to the fully produced audio drama, which Cam stars in, and he also co-starring is good friend of the show and our just own personal lives. Tristan, he stars in that as well. Lemon Tarts in Space has been out for almost a full year now. We're about to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of its release, and we have appreciated our readers' support so much. So do go check that out if you're interested. No pressure, but it is really appreciated if you do. The links to that are in the description.
So this first clip that we're going to throw to is another kind of Patreon plug. This is from the very first installment of the Breakfast Buffet from November 2023.
Whoa.
And this is our reaction to, as I mentioned earlier, us seeing this film in that shitty 35 millimeter print.
Here, I'll make a little noise to signify the time travel. You ready? Boop, 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 boop.
And if we can move to a slightly different but related category, the fun, I mean, we are ambassadors at this point for Alamo Drafthouse.
Truly.
But they have done such a great job through the months, I mean, basically September and October, and now going into November too, of showing great old horror movies.
Yes.
So we've seen a bunch of those.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's been a couple a week.
Yeah, it's been really, really fun.
And there are some that we don't feel the need to talk about yet, like The Thing, The Exorcist, and Frankenstein. We saw all of those, but if we talk about those, it'll be in dedicated episodes.
Right, so let's not.
But there are other ones that we've seen on the big screen, some of them for the first time, some of them we've seen a bunch, that do, I think, warrant some discussion at this level of a breakfast buffet. So
let's do it.
The first one I want to play with, and I think the one we were both most excited for in this last month, was the original John Carpenter Halloween.
Oh my gosh. And that's one that I've seen, I don't know, at least 5 times at this point. I love that movie. And we've seen it at home. We saw it in a drive-in during I think it was 2021 or maybe it's 2020. It was during COVID, so we saw it at a drive-in. And it was really fun. But
we got into all those movies during COVID.
We did. Yeah. I mean, that was that was our horror renaissance was during COVID. And that's how we become such big fans.
Watching H2O 20 years later with your dad.
Oh my God. That was so fun. But no, so we saw, not only was this the original Halloween on the big screen, it was at 9:30 p.m. Alamo does Terror Tuesdays, which is really fun. They do late night showings, but it was on 35 millimeter. And it was so much fun. It was a special, I don't know what the terms are. It was a special print, yes, that had never been shown, and they kind of cleaned it up and tried to make it, look as good as it could, because it looked like shit apparently. And when we watched it, it was a little faded. The saturation was all wrong. There were bits where it would cut out for a second, but it was so charming.
Yes.
It was perfect for the movie. I loved it.
And it gave it more... It's not that it just gave it more texture and film grain and all that. It gave it more mystique.
Yeah.
The shots of Haddonfield at the beginning.
Oh my gosh.
Were overexposed and undersaturated.
Yes.
So it gave it this dated, impossibly autumnal feel.
Yes, everything looked a little bit orange or pink, which was perfect.
The color kept kind of fading in and out. And I don't mean it went from black and white to color. It faded in between different colors. So sometimes the harsher blacks would feel more green tinted.
Yeah, and it truly felt like a 2011 Instagram filter. But it was authentic. It wasn't this weird filter of someone trying to put something on top of a digital movie to make it look old. It genuinely was. And that movie is now 50 years old.
45.
Okay.
We saw it on the 45th anniversary of its release.
Oh, okay. Very, very cool. So yeah, it was so much fun. And I mean, that movie is great, but I'd never seen it in a big theater like that. And it just gave me a real appreciation for it.
The sound really spoke to me too, because there was such a static rush and noise floor.
Yes.
Running through the entire movie.
And of course that music is so good. So when it hits, it's awesome. Yes.
So you feel the music kind of throbbing and bumbling underneath all of these creepy scenes. But also the space between the dialogue.
Yeah.
Because it's a fairly sparse movie.
And it's a little slow paced. For a slasher, it's pretty slow paced.
So you have the static, but it I don't know, it's almost an additional score or soundtrack, especially when you have Dr. Loomis sitting there doing these almost Alan Rickman delays in between his lines.
Yes.
That are, I mean, he's just a hype man for Michael Myers.
Right.
All he does is talk him up through the movie.
Yeah.
But when you have that static and that rush and feedback, and then he sort of rises above that for these almost bumper sticker phrases of how scary Michael Myers is.
Yes.
It really somehow gave the movie even more atmosphere.
Boop, 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 boop.
And we're back in 2025. The second clip that we're going to throw to here is from our discussion of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot from 2022, which is on Netflix. It was a Netflix production. And that's a fun episode. We loved that movie so much. I think we're the only people who watched or loved it.
Nobody else liked that movie, but brother, we loved it, and we had a really good discussion.
This is from February 2022, and the movie is so in conversation with the sequelized, franchised thing that has happened to Halloween that in this clip we'll be talking about various approaches to legacy sequels and how you deal with returning protagonists.
All right, let's go back all the way to 2022. Boop, 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 boop. This movie just did such a great job of honoring the original and doing callbacks to it without it just feeling like a fan service remake.
Yeah, because...
I'm sorry. Like, even the way they incorporated, I don't know her name, the
Sally.
Sally, the final
Hardest
girl.
Yeah.
The final girl, you know, because one of the biggest, I decided I hadn't read much criticism. I had watched the trailer and read the comments on the trailer, so that's as much research as I did before.
Watch the trailer.
Right. But a lot of comments I saw in the trailer was, because the trailer really emphasizes Sally's role in the movie, and everybody said, this is just going to be Halloween Kills. Or Halloween 2018 with Jamie Lee Curtis coming back and getting revenge at last, and I was concerned about that too. But she was in this movie and was central, but she was not the main character of this movie. The main character of this movie was Mel, and like it was about her and the two sisters and their friend group. Like, it wasn't about Sally. Sally just came in as like almost as a cameo rather than it being about her. And that is, again, a way to honor the original and respect her as a character, and to acknowledge that, of course, she would be involved in this, but to then not let her survive, like not let her like win, and to not make it all about her, I think makes it its own movie, and it's not just fan service.
And I agree that the marketing is stupid there, because it is more of a cameo role, but it makes an important statement about the fundamental difference between this story and the Halloween franchise.
Right.
Because Sally thought this was a decades-long vendetta.
Uh-huh.
Well, I have some notes about the characters here that you kind of just transitioned into.
You're welcome.
I thought every character in this movie was flawed but memorable. They were good. They were kind of packaged up, so you understood them really quick.
Yep.
And then they had their own little arcs, and then they were killed off in gorgeous fashion.
Yeah, very quickly, too. Like, I didn't think they were all going to die as quickly as they did.
And I was expecting... Boom. Yeah, I mean, even some of the more forgettable characters, like the fiance, because she didn't have
I mean, that one wasn't as big a shock, but Dante dying, I thought he was going to... Because he and Mel were like partners, so I thought Dante would last way longer into the movie, and he doesn't.
And by the time you get to Sally's introduction... I was expecting her, like you said, to be sort of the Jamie Lee Curtis role.
Yeah.
And I love that they kept it light, but poignant. Where you see
she's memorable. Yeah.
You see the Polaroid. I mean, you remember just having seen the first one.
Yeah.
And the Polaroid of all of them that you see.
The van.
She has a couple lines about like chasing him for a long time.
Yeah, she's like, I've been waiting for this for a long time. You know, that kind of thing.
And I started to roll my eyes.
Yeah, me
because
too.
to me, that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
And I mean, we watched both of the new Halloween movies. I rolled my eyes through that entire thing because the fatal flaw for me in that franchise is the relationship between Michael and Laurie.
Yeah, like he feels like he has to kill her specifically, and he's drawn to her for some reason, and they explain it away by it's his sister or...
Which the second movie did. So the first movie was just him attacking this town.
Yeah.
But then they started developing this relationship where everyone loved her, but everyone loved him too. But you can't just keep that going forever because he's a murderer. He has to kill people.
Yeah.
And they developed this lore that they're brother and sister. And then there are so many movies that she came back for where she kills him at the end. But then 5 years later, they just remake the movie with the same thing. And then bringing her back in the 2018 Halloween, I just didn't care. I didn't believe that she'd been like a doomsday prepper for 40 years.
Yeah,
It just seemed so limp
and then he
obligatory.
came back specifically to kill her. Because what happens...
why would he care? He doesn't have thoughts like that.
Well, exactly. And so what's so great, which I think you're getting to about this one, is that he doesn't the Leatherface does not remember Sally.
Exactly.
He has no idea who she is.
If anything, I mean, people talk about Scream, and we've never seen those movies. We will
really
soon,
should.
I imagine,
Yeah.
and probably cover them.
Probably.
But people talk about Scream as a franchise that comments on the trends in horror and where the genre is now. I feel like the inclusion of Sally Hardesty in this movie is very much... It's almost a parody of what they did with Jamie Lee Curtis.
It's poking fun at that, exactly.
Because they have her show up all grizzled with the hat. And
She looks really cool.
Yeah, she looks great.
Yeah.
This is the culmination of like a decades-long battle they have. But the movie corrects that assumption. This is not Laurie Strode. This franchise, I mean, I was like yelling this at the TV. I was so happy. This franchise is about one character.
Yes.
She tries to do the Breaking Bad say my name thing. And he doesn't.
And he's just like...
He obviously doesn't say anything. He's a killing machine.
He doesn't say anything. He has no lines. He has no thoughts.
So he just...
Except that maybe his only human trait is that he loved his adopted mother.
Right, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But he gives her this chainsaw uppercut and just destroys her.
He absolutely killed her. Yeah.
Because the story's not about anyone but Leatherface.
Right.
Everything else is interchangeable. But this is not a decades-long character opera.
And the movie stays true to that because at the end, you think that the two sisters have triumphed, they've killed him, they can move on now, they can go back to their lives. And instead, it flips it and immediately kills Mel. And he hasn't died.
Well, yeah. So,
and then it's just the other sister who has to deal with her
and
trauma.
look what Halloween 2018 did. It ended with Laurie finally killing Michael Myers. Oops, he's not dead. The next one, she has to finally kill Michael Myers.
Yeah.
And at the end of that one, oops, he's not dead. So we have to... Like, it's so boring. It's so uncreative and trite and boring. And this movie... Of course he kills her. And
of course he's not dead.
So not only do you kill the legacy character in such a like mission statement fashion. Like this is again that confidence I talked about in this movie for having an 85-minute all killer no filler horror movie.
Yeah.
What a great declaration that they understand the character.
Yeah.
They understand the franchise. There's no plot armor of if Jamie Lee Curtis comes back, we have to leave it open where she can sign it. Like, it's so beautiful, and you think the movie's setting up these sisters as the new franchise leads, and maybe we'll get a sequel. Oh, maybe we'll pretend it was always meant to be a trilogy, so we can get a third one greenlit.
Right?
No, the movie ends with him cutting her head off.
I know, it's so good.
It's so funny.
And what's also nice though is that it's still like is respectful of Sally's character, because Sally is killed by him via the chainsaw, but like as she's like laying in a pile of trash dying, she saves the sisters by shooting him with the shotgun, and then she gives the gun to the sister. I can't remember what's Mel's sister's name.
I don't know.
I don't know her name. Anyway, she gives her the shotgun, and that's how they're able to in theory escape, and then they don't at the end.
They
but
incapacitate him.
But she still saves their lives, and she still gets to have her like fuck you moment and shoots him while laying in a pile of trash. So it's really cool.
I mean, how many times have we learned this lesson in classic horror? Characters can be badass without winning.
Totally. Yeah. She goes out so beautifully. I mean, what else was she going to do with her life? She was old.
Right.
This
was her character
She was just
arc.
Slaughtering pigs. Like,
this was the end of her character arc.
Yeah.
She got that, but the eternal killing machine that is Leatherface doesn't care about your vendetta. He's not going to say your name. He doesn't remember you.
No, he's just mad that his mom is dead.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought that was beautiful. And it is a great response to the Halloween movies.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about Halloween Kills on this channel.
No, because it was atroцiously bad. There's nothing else to say.
It was terrible. And this was so much funnier than that. Because that one is trying to set up this like generational grudge match.
Yeah.
With all of Laurie's, her daughter and then the granddaughter.
And then all the kids who grew up and now they're kids. Oh, God.
For this movie to end with him holding up the head of the escaping victorious protagonist is such a great counterpunch to that.
Absolutely. Boop, 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 boop. That's really fun every time, I gotta say.
It really is. This last one, we had to say for last because we're doing the most time traveling for this one. And yes, for all of our benefits, I went back and viciously edited this one.
Listen,
I clipped and cut in every and pause, and you got to start somewhere.
I feel like I really got to formally apologize for my active listening. I I'm really sorry that is what I did for so long. And it's something I still struggle with. And you guys are welcome to make fun of me in the comments. I just want everyone to know, including Cam, that I hear him. I want him to know that he's heard. So I apologize. But this clip is really fun, and that's why we're including it. So why don't you tell the listeners what it's about?
It's a little bit of a victory lap. But yes, I think this is a little charming. So we're going all the way back to almost the very beginning of the show. This is October of 2020.
Whoa!
When we were starting our Lord of the Rings chapter by chapter project. This is the first chapter of our Fellowship of the Ring discussion.
Damn.
And we've just seen, I think, most of the Halloween movies. This was, the beginning of our horror journey is basically the beginning of the podcast.
Fall 2020 was when we dove into horror like full blown. And so this is like, yeah, exactly. It started with the show.
And this is when we had a second breakfast segment. We used to do one episode a week with a chapter by chapter of a fantasy book and then whatever the fuck else we saw that week.
Yep.
So in this one, we're talking about creative continuity and fan service and the idea of seeing the original film that created a cliche and how you escalate across a franchise. Big ideas, not the best execution, but I think there's a charm to it.
I think it's a charming discussion. I went back and listened.
There's a charm now because I cut it to ribbons.
I really appreciate that. No, I did listen back, and it's a fun one. So I encourage y'all to listen, and I hope you let us know what you think. Okay, you ready? We're going to go back 5 years, Cam. Boo, 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 boo.
So, like I said before, my second breakfast is about echoes. Mm-hmm. So, in the past, week and a half, Maggie and I have been blowing through horror movies.
Yeah,
because it's October.
A very spooky October. It's really fun.
And in particular, in the last week, we've watched 3 different versions of Halloween.
Yes.
Which is a slasher from the late 70s about a guy in a mask with a knife who never talks, who doesn't have any he's never humanized. The writers say they never wanted anyone to be able to relate to him. Mm-hmm. He's just this boogeyman killing machine. Mm-hmm. So the original was 1978, Jamie Lee Curtis, and then it was remade. It's sort of a remake with an origin story strapped onto it in 2007 by Rob Zombie.
Yes.
First one was John Carpenter.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, they brought back Jamie Lee Curtis. And the writers didn't call it a remake or a reboot. They called it a recalibration. But basically, it's a sequel to the first one.
Right, because there were a bunch of sequels in the 70s and 80s. But
like 9.
Right, but they kind of jump all over the place in terms of continuity, and so like this 2018 recalibration ignores all of the previous sequels.
I wanted to use their word, even though it's a little eye-rolly.
Sure.
So
most artistic things are eye-rolly, unfortunately.
And this does very much relate to our conversation about Lord of the Rings, because Echo, to me, is the idea of everything I just laid out about the end of this chapter, where the first chapter of The Hobbit and the first chapter of Fellowship have all these similar overtures of one hobbit being haggard by all these different outsiders, of having them set off on a quest and hinting at all these scary things in the outside world, of having the wizard mentor. Like, there's so much retread in such a delicate way that I thought, looking at 3 movies that are have the exact same title. One of them's kind of a remake. One of them's a recalibration. One of them throws in an origin story. The other one really avoids it. There are these same kind of negotiations of structure when you're following the same basic pattern. So the 1978 movie, the original, is the shortest of the 3, which is always the way. It's short, it's suggestive, it's potent, and nothing is fully explained, which is The Hobbit.
Yeah.
So the 2007 movie, which was the remake, and the first half is basically a brand new origin story about the serial killer when he's a kid. So that movie in 2007 is heightened. It's much more violent. It's much darker, more brutal. The killer is he's like this big, tall Frankenstein.
Yeah, you see a lot more blood. And
instead of just being a guy with a mask who doesn't talk, he's like 8'6". He's huge. And
you don't see his face, but there are a lot of moments where he's not wearing a mask, like his hair covers his face.
The character everything in the movie is heightened. Yeah. It's very reverential of the original, while like riffing in all these weird ways. And it's kind of over-explained. The movie's longer, which is that seems like the traditional route of a remake. It's kind of less.
Yeah.
And the 2018 version, which was the sequel to the original, that sort of also serves as an entry point. You don't really need to have seen the original.
No.
It is full of winks at the audience, references to the original,
Plenty of links, yeah.
a really careful honoring of the characters of the original arcs in the first version, and it introduces the next generation of characters.
Yeah.
So
yes, Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter and granddaughter.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's more of a family thing, an emphasis on family trees. You see what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, I do.
But of course, there's one big difference here. It's that neither the 2007 or the 2018 movies were made by the original artist. John Carpenter being the guy who wrote and directed the original. And he was, executive producer and music composer on one of these, and he's involved in the other one a little bit.
Right, but he's not in charge.
It illustrates the huge difficulty of expanding, continuing, or revisiting a classic work decades later and at greater length. Is Michael Myers is less, he's the serial killer.
Yeah.
He's less scary when he's more human. When you show too much of his childhood, you see too much into his head.
Right.
He's not the boogeyman anymore.
He was the least scary in the 2007.
So the lesson...
We'd seen so much of him as a child.
Oh, yeah. I mean...
That's true.
In the hospital, you're examining what's wrong with him.
I mean, he was still scary. Like, the movie was well done. But
the movie was probably more scary than the original, but the moments of violence were scarier. I think Michael is less of a spooky supernatural presence.
Well, and because they call him Michael so much,
Sure.
They name him, they give him his human name. Whereas in the Jamie Lee Curtis films, she calls him Michael more in the 2018. But I mean, the only person who calls him Michael in the 1978 is his psychiatrist, his doctor. Everyone else they don't know who he is. So he's this unknown. He's the boogeyman.
So if the kind of lesson is that Michael Myers is less scary when he's more human, we can see Tolkien in this chapter learning from that, and not directly, of course, but he goes the other way in terms of his magic. Because he expands his world hugely just in this chapter. He expands his world and the depth of his world in his prologues and notes before this. But he continues to obscure the magic of the world. He has the smartest magical figure in this universe say he doesn't understand the ring.
So he makes that this big unknown, which makes it more scary.
So he's going back to the well in the same way the 2007 Rob Zombie movie went back to the original Carpenter. But he doesn't over-explain
right.
in
If
going
anything,
back to it.
He explains more how unknown it is. Like, in The Hobbit, it's not like we fully understood the ring. Like, we never, and every episode we had intense debates about the ring. But it's not talked about as no one understands it, and it's kind of dangerous. It's all hinted at. But, like, in this, he's, like, really hitting home, like, it's this big, unknown, scary thing, and it's going to have all these implications.
And the advantage that Tolkien has in these books of Middle-earth is, because they're all done by the same guy, the same artist, he's not so reverential of the original. The Hobbit. He's kind of course correcting on a lot of things.
Yeah.
He's adding a pretty rigorous class commentary in the prologue. And there's never really a sense of uncertainty. Chapter 1 of Fellowship never feels intimidated by the world of the Hobbit in the way that all the latter Halloween movies feel intimidated and scared and almost a little resentful of the original Halloween, like they have to do bigger, badder, and bloodier.
Yeah.
There's never that sense of intimidation. He uses the word legacy 100,000 times in this chapter, but it's never with that edge.
Yeah.
How many times does a horror movie open with a slow zoom out as a car is driving away?
Yeah.
So you think of The Shining.
You're right.
But then the rest of the movie is like a mediocre retread of things you loved when they were original or bold or risky, like they are in The Shining. So instead of this like reverence that cripples originality or risk-taking, it becomes a spark notes of things that have worked before, he relegates fan service and callbacks to footnotes. This chapter is dominated by the new story and sort of the new characters. This is the rise of Frodo through this chapter, and every page of it, for being a 20-page chapter that I was nervous about the second I opened the book today, it really felt urgent. The message that sends in the first chapter of a book, a huge book compared to 20 years ago a short, digestible, provocative book. It's almost like he's reassuring, like Tolkien's reassuring the readers, that this longer work is still punchy.
Yeah.
That he's not going to waste your time, and that it's the same guy. He's the same guy who you loved in The Hobbit.
He does such a nice job of doing things that are similar to The Hobbit, making us feel comfortable in this world, making us feel like we're not reading this this whole different thing. Like we feel like we can handle it, but still differentiating it and keeping it interesting. And we don't feel like we're just reading the same story, but with Frodo instead of Bilbo. Like he balances that old and new so well.
Old and new is a huge binary that's useful to talk about this. I had in my notes something about the 2 Shakespeare plays. He has this whole, his series of histories. There are 2 on Henry IV, and the first one is this really punchy story about young revolutionaries, and the second one is this slow, reflective meditation on the first one and the events of the first one and what it meant and what the huge, nasty fallout was. Tolkien does that punchiness and meditation at the same time here, and I think that's a mark of his confidence and skill expanded over years since The Hobbit.
I like that you brought up the ideas of like adaptation and like revisiting old tropes and stuff like that. I wasn't thinking about like the Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit so much. I was more thinking about, in my notes I wrote OG fantasy versus like modern fantasy. If we put the 1978 Halloween as like one of the first slasher movies, it establishes a lot of those tropes you see in horror movies of, the guy with the knife, the girl screaming and running around and him popping out of places, and the dumb teens who are hooking up, getting killed, stuff like that. Like all of those tropes that you're used to. The Lord of the Rings establishes a lot of the fantasy tropes, obviously, which is a big reason why we're reading this. I mean, well, at least for me. I mean, we've been wanting to read this for forever, but also I like to read the first things of stuff and see where they came from, which is also why I'm really enjoying watching all these old horror movies. And so if you can kind of compare like 1978 Halloween with Lord of the Rings and then something like Game of Thrones with the 2018 Halloween, because it's taking what Lord of the Rings did, but like adding the ways that the genre has evolved. Like
on the shoulders of giants.
Right, making it more violent. The 2018 Halloween tries to dig into more than the 1978 one did. That's fun that we're kind of engaging with that stuff on 2 different planes.
Oh, yeah.
In horror movies and in fantasy books.
Right, because you can roll your eyes at things that have become tropes, even if you're seeing the first time they ever showed up. And that can become such a disservice to an original work that was just so successful and copied.
Because if you watch the 1978 Halloween, knowing it was the first thing to do a lot of these things, you don't roll your eyes at the dumb horny teens getting killed, and you don't roll your eyes at the girl running around and screaming in the same way that you don't roll your eyes at Frodo being this orphaned hero who, saves the world, the way that you would at something that was made now that does that. Boop, 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 boop. And we're back. I hope you enjoyed that. I sound so young in those. I sound like a little baby girl. I don't like it.
We were
sound
also
weird.
I mean, we were sharing a fucking microphone. It was
at that point we must have had our own.
You think?
I think
so.
we
waited a while.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We were doing our best.
We've finally done it. We've
have.
talked about Halloween 1978.
Yes,
the original.
Yeah.
The grandfather of all slashers.
I really enjoyed this discussion.
Me too.
This was way longer than I thought it was going to be, but I've had a really good time. And this is what happens every time we do a big classic or a big like favorite is we think, oh, I don't really know where to start. Oh, I don't really know. It's so intimidating. And then we have like a fantastic hour-long discussion. And I really, really enjoyed this.
I would say that's true of every episode. I don't know if you've ever wanted to record, but you always...
Listener, that is very much not true. I enjoy it more once we sit down and we're doing it. It's more like, oh, this is going to take a lot of energy. But like it's, and I wish this was my full-time job because I would love it way more than my other job, but it's fine. Join the Patreon.
What a note to end things on. Yeah, so
no, thank you so much for listening. It's been so much fun.
Next week will be the grand finale of the 2025 Summerween series.
It's a really exciting Halloween special that I can't reveal.
Big one.
But it's a really exciting Halloween special.
Yes, it is.
We always do a Halloween special every year, but this year it's our 5-year podcast Halloween anniversary. The episode is dropping on Halloween. It's going to
also,
be a really
Summerween
good time.
lasted like 6 months.
You know, it had to, because it's still summer here.
It was 92 degrees yesterday.
The planet is dying. Anyway, but we are not.
Anyway,
We're here.
We're not.
We're recording.
We'll be here next week, definitely.
Absolutely. Cool. Let us know what you think of Halloween, of any of the ideas that we've shared. Like, subscribe if you made it to the end. Thank you so much for listening and for supporting us. We'll catch you here in just a few days with another brand new episode.